big thank you and welcome to Nate, who's going to be helping us learn more about Snyk Code. Hey,
Hey,
Nate.
bud. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you, bud?
Not too bad.
That's good. Not too bad. Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. So getting started with Snyk Code. What do we have in store for us today, Nate?
Yeah, really just want to give an introduction to Snyk Code, our static analysis project. Right. So for those who aren't familiar, it was something we rolled out last year. Has been seeing a lot of success. I mean, so static analysis is not new, right? Statically scanning code, looking for vulns has been around for 20 years or so. But what we've tried to do is make something that's really a lot more useful for developers and how they want to work. Right. Most static tooling was built at a time when you're doing waterfall development. Things are getting done. A security assessment after you've had a month-long huge process. So we want to be able to fit this into more modern Sdlcs, right? We want to be able to scan where it's useful for developers. So plugging in the repo and the IDE, the places where devs are already working, but doing it quickly and doing it with a high degree of accuracy. So, I think I saw a couple people in the comments talking about how easy it was to get up and running with Snyk in general. We want to bring that to the first party code side. So not just your open source, but everything your developers are writing too.
Awesome. I'm super excited about that. Well, I'll let you take it away, and if need be, I'll pop in here and there when needed. Does that
All
sound
right.
good?
Yeah, sounds good. So let me just share up my screen.
Also, while you're doing that, Nate, Robert Tables in the chat loves the globe that you got on your desk there.
Thanks. That was actually a wedding present from an old roommate. So not sure
Nice.
how he decided to give it to me, but I love that thing.
Yeah, that's cool. All right,
Excellent.
well, take it away.
Perfect. So if you've seen Snyk before, this will look familiar. If not, it should be pretty straightforward to understand, right? I've got all my projects. And again, as I said, the goal really is make this friendly to developers, get this somewhere that's useful to the people who are actually responsible for fixing the things we find, and do it in a way that's not going to interrupt their flow. Right. So we can plug in all across the Sdlc. We've got repository integration. We can look in the IDE. We can use the CLI to do this in a flexible way if you want to run CI scans or kind of have a custom workflow. But the goal is just make this easy to use and something that people are happy to integrate. So getting up and running with Snyk Code, just as simple as onboarding any other project in Snyk. I've got it synced up with my GitHub here. I'll show you Rails. Figure there's a lot of JavaScript today, so I'll show a little Ruby. But that's it. Right, so there's no need to come in here, pre-provision a project ahead of time. You don't have to package anything in any specific way. And a lot of people actually get started using Snyk Code just because they're already scanning for open source. They're doing container assessments. So we can just add this alongside and do everything in one pane of glass. Quick to scan. I think the last time I scanned this, it took about 40 seconds to do everything. I can click that view log. We can see everything that's being pulled in, all the analysis being run. And that's going to do all of the assessment on our back end, give you the results right here. So again, what we want to do is give consolidation to all the different components that we're looking at, make it easy to find things for whoever's doing the review of these items. So security team can come here, see everything in view. But for developers, we don't want to look at it through another platform, through another component, right? We want to be able to put this somewhere useful.
Hey, Nate, really quick.
Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt, but if you could zoom in a little bit more, that way the folks that might be watching on smaller screens can see. Make it like perfect. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yep. So you can actually see, look, Snyk Code supported files, all complete. So we've got the scan. We've got the results of the static analysis. We do a little breakdown here. You can see how many different files were actually analyzed. And in this case, we're looking across the JavaScript, the HTML, all the Ruby. So finding across files, doing full interfile semantic data flow analysis, and understanding of how data is entering the application, how it's being used, and flagging all the sorts of things that you would expect to find, but really focusing on a high degree of confidence what we're giving back. So not just trying to give a bunch of noise and make this something that slows down development, but something that's actually really useful to the team. So if you come in, you'll see little snippets of code. We'll actually link to the sink where the issue is occurring. This is all being lazy loaded through that repo integration. So what I'm doing is I'm able to come in just to see what the code looks like now. I don't need to load any other files, but I can click in, get full detail. I can actually track how this is presenting itself inside the application. So I can walk from the source, where it's coming in. I can get detailed information about how it's moving through the application, and then just provide that all within one UI here. But the nice thing is our Snyk Code is powered by machine learning. So we crawl different open source repositories. We identify different candidate patterns for what might be vulnerable sinks and sources. And because we do that, we're able to identify not just vulnerable patterns, but also when those have been fixed in open source projects. So if I'm looking here, I can actually get different candidate examples for how to remediate these issues. I've seen, for example, in some of these permissive open source projects, where people have implemented fixes that then my developers can use to understand and actually implement in their own projects. So again, a nice workflow here where we can come in. We've started to add our Snyk Learn as well. So if developers aren't comfortable with what these issues are, they'll also see some information about how to fix these things, different components. They can apply different interactive coursework where we can really get an understanding. But again, the goal is to be where developers are. And so that means we want to get all this information down into the IDE so they don't have to hop in, go to different places, or modify the workflow that they have. So here in IntelliJ, we've actually implemented all of our different scanning options. So you can see we've got container scanning, configuration. What we want to look at here, just that security issue. So being able to make sure that we understand what's happening while we're writing code. And because it can scan quickly, we are doing the exact same analysis in the IDE that we're doing on the back end. So you're not going to see differences popping up depending on where you're actually running your assessment. It's going to be the same results in the IDE, in the CI, in the repository. So it really is a great way to make sure that I'm getting all the information where I want it, not compromising speed or security, making sure that we have coverage for both. So I can click through. Again, we're going to provide all that same information from the UI down into the IDE here. But so let's take a look at that SQL injection, for example, that we had. Again, tying to where tainted data is coming in. So we see that it's reading just the params directly, doing some string interpolation. Obviously not something that we're going to want to be doing. It opens us up to SQL injection. But Rails has controls that you can apply around that. So if I look down here, I can get some of these different examples I've seen before. Maybe instead of just directly interpolating that, I can use this find by, pass in a symbol and the parameter, and that'll actually prepare the statement for me, help protect against SQL injection. So let's try that. Just comment this out. Go down here. Do the same query. So user dot find by. What were we pulling in? And ID. Save. You'll see it sees because of saved, it's obsolete. We'll have to rescan. But we see that gets remediated, right? We're still scanning user controller, still getting all of that information back. But we've got this issue fixed. I don't need to worry about it popping up when I get further down. I'm not going to fail in the CI somewhere. I'm not going to get my pull request blocked. So that's the nicest way to get up and running, just doing it right within the IDE for devs. But again, the goal is to be flexible with how we do it, right? So if I wanted to just run it in the CI, if I was using my terminal, I can just come in here. I can see Snyk Code test. And get all that same feedback. So here's where I can gate, right? Here's where I can automate a lot of the protections against any of these issues being pushed to production. And again, just making sure that we're doing the same checks in all places. And one of the nice features we've rolled out recently is actually around PR checking for Snyk Code. So we can actually look when a new pull request is opened, automate the tests that we're doing here. So you don't have to wait till you get into a CI. You don't have to do all the full build, run this alongside other components. We can just look as new functionality is opened up. I can see I've added a new query here. What's that file change? It looks like, again, a case where I've actually come in, I've interpolated this string, and I'm vulnerable to SQL injection. So when I look at the PR, Snyk's automatically running those tests to protect me. And I can see I'm failing on this new SAST issue. If I go details, I can open this up and again, get all that information back here. So I've got my security team reviewing things in the platform. I've got my developers working in the workflows that they already have, and really just able to ensure that I have all this coverage across the Sdlc. Full details available, able to pull, lazy load those snippets, and get some feedback, get that fix analysis all in line here. Oops, I saw a question about VS Code. Yep, we do have integration there. So we can absolutely run these same scans, get all that detailed information right in line. So again, flexible, use what developers are actually using. If I pull up the integration list, you can certainly share it, but you can see all the different places we can plug and play with what your team is working on.
I have a question for you, Nate.
Yeah.
Well, one is this like a good stopping point? You're planning on stopping here and you're looking for doing more Q&A type of the rest of the session, or you're looking to, you have more to show after this?
I think this is a good point to switch if you got some Q&A, things people want to see.
Yeah. So one of my first thoughts is, what would be your advice? So seeing that Snyk Code can plug in into like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, right? So we have CI, CD or CI, right? Play area to plug in Snyk Code, and then our IDE. Is there like a recommended, like, should we as developers or teams in general look to only plug it in one place, or should we try to plug it in all places as much as possible so we catch things earlier on? What would be your advice on that?
Yeah, I think really what you want to do is you want to make sure it works for the team. Start small, spread out from there, right? So starting in the repo is always my favorite place to get started, right? Because that's already your point of collaboration. That's where the teams are working together. Right?
Yeah.
You've got the PR workflow. People are already doing code reviews. And the nice thing about it is you can scan asynchronously too, right? We can run recurring scans. We can do this on a daily or weekly basis without having to trigger it through another workflow. So you've got all that detailed information. And then I like to move left from there if I can, right? Get it into the hands of the developers. Really, the IDE is the place you want to be, because you want to be scanning it while you're writing code. You want to be finding things early and getting all that remediation done before it goes into any other point. So that's kind of the ideal case, but the repository really gives you the nice first gate. That's the first check in where you can kind of enforce some standards. And it's just a lot more natural than doing things in the CI/CD, because that's already the place where people are working together.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But my next, that makes a lot of sense, and I didn't mean to say but. My next question is around like, so I'm a developer. I have the extension installed. Is there anything I need to worry about in terms of like, maybe I'm focused on building something out? Is it going to be constantly scanning while I'm building, or will it wait until, like, what are my options there? Can I tell it through settings or something like that to say only scan at this point, or like when I save the file, or only scan when I intentionally execute to scan my code? What are the options that are available to us there as developers?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically you'll just run it when you want to do the check. So I find the nicest time to do it is right before I do any kind of push up to the repo, so I can make sure, get a last view. But I've got that option to scan it when I save also. So if you want to have it running, it's pretty lightweight. So it uses our CLI in the background, the same one that I just showed in the terminal. So it's simple to run. It passes up to us. It's not going to hog a bunch of resources. So if you want to have it, constantly going every time I'm making a change, every time I save something, I've got that option available too.
Excellent. That's good to hear. So a follow-up question, I guess, on that from Robert Tables I see here is it possible to plug it in where we, instead of maybe, in terms of timing of when it scans, is it possible maybe through Git hook configurations, like a pre-commit hook or a pre-push hook kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the real nice part about the CLI. So when I first joined Snyk, I remember Guy posted something about that stuck with me, was that if you want to have a developer tool, it's got to work instantly out of the box, but it's also got to be infinitely customizable.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we've got that option to tie in wherever you want in the workflow. So if you want to trigger the CLI with a pre-commit hook, right, we can just scan, run, get the results there. And I know
Infinitely customizable? So, like,
functionally,
if I think about the code, you guys can scan my brain?
hey, you can get us a little trigger moment. Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. Sorry, you were about to say something else maybe to follow up on that?
Nope, just that. I was going to say, I do know we've got a couple of customers who like using it in the pre-commit hook, especially when they're checking for secrets, right? We'll look for hard-coded credentials and things because you don't even want those to hit the repo, right? If it's already
Right.
gotten that far, it's already a problem. So we can do that check there, make sure nothing's in the code that we wouldn't want exposed to the repo, get it early on.
Speaking of that, is there so let's say it wasn't caught beforehand. It would be awesome to see if there like I don't know how to remove Git history. So
Yeah.
anytime I've actually maybe had something where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have had that in that commit. And even though I rotate the key, maybe, but sometimes you don't have the opportunity to
Yep.
rotate the key so quickly, right? It'd be cool. I know I'm just putting you on the spot here, but like going through that workflow and trying to be like, oh shoot, how do I reverse that commit now and get it out of history? So,
Yeah, that's
that
a
might be
whole nother
something.
level. But yeah, absolutely being able to, you can't put the cat back in the bag, right? Once it's out there, it's out there. So
Yeah. Alright, one more question I see so far in the chat, and folks, thank you so much for tuning in and chiming in with your questions that you have going on. Feel free to drop them in the chat room. It's very casual. We're happy to have you ask your questions, and no questions like a stupid question here. Don't feel like it's not safe to do that. We're happy to help you out. So next question I see here is from Potato Scream. Is there a way to suppress certain warnings if they're irrelevant or false positives? How do they go about
yeah.
doing that?
Yep, absolutely. So we do have the ability to flag any kind of issue if it's not exploitable, something you don't want to track. We can do that in the UI. And we've actually got a pretty interesting workflow around how we do it. So, it's always tricky if you're scanning code when it changes to make sure that you're tracking the right thing, right? A lot of tools will depend on line number, something kind of inline comment. We didn't want to do that. We found it to be noisy. So
Mm,
what we do is we actually apply the ignores in the semantic data model that we build. So you can kind of think of it as just a big graph. It's got all the flows moving from source to sink. And what we do is actually track that when we ignore things. So you can move it around in the code, you can make adjustments, but as long as semantically the things don't change, right? It's still executing the same functionality, has the same flow. We'll remember it in all your future scans. It was a pretty good paper that the research team wrote on that too.
excellent. That's awesome. Maybe we can get a link to that, and we'll drop it in the chat when you get a chance.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it right now, though. Cool. So was there anything else that you wanted to cover? Did we get to all the talking points that you wanted to at least reach before coming to a close of the session?
Yeah, I think hit the high levels pretty quick, but got to show a couple different points in the SDLC, right? Showed some repo, showed some IDE. So I think those were the main things.
Well, so let's talk about that really quick. So I know I do this myself, so I'm not like calling you out on this or anything. We tend to use acronyms a lot, right? And
Yep.
I very much take it is near and dear to me to make sure to make things are beginner friendly. So when we say SDLC, what does that mean if you don't mind
Yeah.
diving into that a bit?
Yeah. Just talking about the software development lifecycle, right? Because there is a process you're always going through when you're creating code, you're pushing it out to production, getting things done. So I mean, that what that is going to be different for everybody, right? Different teams do it different ways, use different tools, but it's just that whole flow end to end when you come from a developer writing code, getting it done on their local machine, pushing it up to ultimately reach production. So it's all the different systems, all the different tools that are touched on in the middle there.
Could you share what might be an example like of a typical workflow somebody might go through that's that software development life cycle, just to give it a little bit more meat for people to understand?
Yeah, definitely. So pretty typical, right? We'll start with, whatever my new work item is. Maybe I'm getting a Jira ticket, some feature I've got to implement. So I've got the code locally, pull up my IDE, start writing whatever it is that I want to get done. Usually using some kind of version control, you've got Git where you're going to be breaking off, creating a new branch, adding the feature there. So I take that new branch where I'm not going to alter any existing work. I write my code, make sure it's running on everything that I want to locally, right? I've got my tests, I'm doing my security scanning. From there, I decide I've got the feature implemented the way I want. I hit commit, I push it up to the repo, right? So that's where we get that PR check. That's where we're integrating with Snyk. Because like I said, that's the really natural collaboration point for most dev teams.
Yeah.
Because there, you get a notification that a PR is open. Basically, the request, like I've added some new feature, I'd like the team to review, merge it into the main branch where we can actually get that pushed out into production. So good practice doing code reviews there, having your automated tests run. So someone else on my team can come, they can take a look, they can make sure that I've implemented it the way that we expect it to. It's up to our coding standards. gets approved, we merge it in. And then what you want to do is ideally automate the process of getting it out into production. A lot of teams still doing some of that manually, going on servers, handling things. Obviously not great. Obviously leaves you exposed to problems with the workflow.
You
But
mean I can't push to production just directly from my machine? I
I
thought that
hope
was
not.
good practice.
It's fast, right? Just getting things
So
done, hot fixing on the server.
yeah, really?
But yeah. But yeah,
All
run that
right,
through
so
the API and
couple oh, go ahead, sorry.
oh, no, you're good.
So a couple more questions for you that came to mind, but a little bit unrelated. Tabs or spaces, man?
I'm gonna be honest, don't you just set your tab to use spaces so that you can just quietly go
That's
about your
my
life
go-to
without
answer too,
getting
man. You got me,
hacked?
you got me. You didn't fall for it. And do you have, by any chance, some hats that you, handy that you wear at all? Like, different hats. I don't know if you caught the beginning of the stream, but Brian and I, we were just going nuts finding different hats that we have and popping them on.
I didn't. I don't think I have any in this room.
Oh,
I had a beanie on earlier, but it's snowing here in Massachusetts, so I had to take that off and hang it up. I got to
gotcha.
shovel the driveway before this.
Nice. That's a
Yeah,
good, like, peaceful thing to do. I always enjoyed doing that when I used to live in New York, and,
I
I
don't
know
believe you.
peop what's that?
I don't believe you.
You don't? I really do. I swear. I would shovel my parents' driveway. I would do I'm a night owl, so I would stay up kinda late, and I would just love to be in that peaceful atmosphere where it's like, because the snow makes it so silent, you know? And just
That's
shoveling the
true.
snow,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
I mean, it's physically not so fun. I hear you on that, but, like, looking at it from that perspective, I always kinda enjoyed it, so
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. Looking out the window, it looks nice out there, but carrying it away is not fun.
yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. Thank you so much, Nate. This was super informative and helpful, and it looks like lots of folks in the chat were appreciative of that as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed being here, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.